So today I'm gonna show you guys how I balance my gimbal. And I understand there's a ton of tutorials out there, but I find that this has worked the best for me. Now this tutorial is going to help pretty much like 98% of the gimbals out there because more or less they're all the same. So the very first thing that I like to do first is always do a firmware upgrade on the gimbal. You'll be surprised, like I've had this gimbal, this is the Moza Air, and I've had it for about a year and a half, and there's been so many upgrades that not only help improve the motor itself, but you also get additional features. So before you do anything, I will always check for a firmware upgrade. So that's step number one. Number two is make sure to take any additional accessories and items that are not necessary in the camera. So for example, right now I have the lens cap on. We definitely want to take this out before we balance it because we're not going to use that whenever we're shooting, obviously, and that's just going to add additional weight. Same thing, if you have any batteries, make sure that they are inside before you begin, and also any SD card or SD cards, because you'd be surprised, even an SD card will throw off the balance. Even if it's like 1 or 2%, it'll still make the motors work a little bit harder if you don't already have them on there. So once you get everything set up, the next step is we need to put the camera onto the base plate of the gimbal. Now, I recommend that you don't overly tighten this, but here's the thing. Now, in this particular gimbal, which is very important, you'll notice that there's two rails. There's one on the left and one on the right. The one on the right, or I guess your left, is closest to the motor. You always want to balance the gimbal closest to the motor. And the only reason you'll use this one is if your camera is really wide. Now, because we are using the Sony a7S II, we definitely want to have it closest to the motor, so we're going to use the one on the right. Well, I guess it would be your left. Now, you'll notice something right away. As soon as I let go, the camera is going to either go down or it's going to fall back. That's either because it's front heavy or back heavy. Now this is a very heavy lens. It is a 16-35 G Master lens. So obviously I kind of already assume it's gonna be front heavy. Now, one thing I always recommend too, because it is a 16-35, now pay attention. If I do this, the zoom, you'll notice that the actual zoom itself will either retract or move forward and back. So what I like to do is always move it to about 24 millimeters. So I want to leave it around 24 millimeters because that's going to be right around the middle. So if I'm ever filming something, and let's say for example, I need to go to 16, it's going to throw the balance off a little bit, but if it's just enough so I can do my shot, it'll be fine. So I always like to leave it right in the middle. So 24 is going to be the sweet spot. So now once I do that, we have to make sure to move the camera to make sure that it doesn't fall forward or it doesn't fall back. So I recommend to loosen the tensioner just a little bit, keep it kind of snug, and make adjustments as needed. Now, again, you're gonna probably have to do very micro adjustments because it's gonna either fall forward or back, and we're almost there, just a little bit more. I think that's pretty good. Make sure you tighten up the tensioner. And again, make sure the camera is perfectly aligned. You don't want it to, go to the left or right. So in this case, I think this looks pretty good, actually. I would be happy with this. It looks straight to me. And again, it's not falling forward or back. So now the next thing that you need to do is we need to adjust the roll arm. I'm gonna go ahead and move the gimbal this side so that way you guys can see it better, but it's gonna be a little bit harder for me to adjust, but that's fine. So you'll notice that the camera is falling, I guess, to your left, and it's going to be to my right. This is where we need to adjust the roll arm. So what I like to do is, of course, loosen this up just a little bit, this little tensioner up above. Now, if the camera's falling to the left, then that means you need to move this arm, the roll arm, to the right. So just make these little adjustments and you'll notice it starts getting a little bit better, very gently, a little bit better. Just a little bit, oh, we're almost there. Again, little micro adjustments. Again, this is gonna be one of those where it's just gonna be very gentle. There it is. I think that looks pretty straight to me. If that looks good, tighten up the tensioner. Again, do it as best as possible so it does not fall off. And that looks pretty good. So now what we need to do is adjust the tilt. So the best way to do that, and I'll actually show you this way, is you want to move the camera or position the camera up. So something's going to happen. It's either going to fall forward like it's doing right now, or it's going to fall backwards. So the way you adjust the tilt is you take this tensioner here by the roll motor, and then you loosen this up, and then you make, again, micro adjustments. So pretty much either forward or back depending on where it's moving, and I think I got it actually. Wow, that was pretty good. It looks like I need to move just a little bit more. Oh, you see that? These little small adjustments. Like, again, it takes sometimes very minor adjustments, and then I think I got it. That's pretty good. Okay, tighten that up. Now you'll notice if I leave the gimbal, if I don't touch it, if I don't touch the camera will stay up. If I move the camera down, it will stay down. So it doesn't matter how I position the camera. If I leave it up, if I move it center, it's going to stay. And that's the idea. You know that you properly balanced it whenever you can position the camera any which way, and it's pretty much gonna stay there. So the final thing that we have to do is adjust the yaw, which is this guy down here. So what I recommend is you grab and pick up the gimbal, and then you either move it forward or you move it back. Now, if you move it forward and you start tilting it, you'll notice that the gimbal will start to either move to the left or to the right. So you'll have to make adjustments accordingly. So in this case, it's moving to my left. That means I have to push in a little bit more, tighten that up. Look at that, my first shot. Now it doesn't move left. Look, I can do this, I can do that, and that's pretty much good. And I think we got it. So everything looks good. The last thing obviously is just power the thing on. So let's go ahead and power this bad boy on. And now it's perfectly balanced. And if I move this to the left, to the right, up, if I go down, perfectly fine. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and look down, look up. Now remember I told you guys, if I'm gonna zoom, it's going to throw off the balance, and that's okay. So what I always recommend you do is don't do it here, because you're stressing the motor out and you're really gonna probably end up possibly damaging something. So what I recommend is you hold the motor here and then you just adjust the zoom whenever needed. So in this case, I'm gonna go 16, and it's gonna be off balance now, but it's still going to work. It's going to work without any problems, see? I can go up, down, I can go left and right, even though it's not technically perfectly balanced. Same thing if I go 35, the balance is gonna be off a little bit, and it'll still work. But remember, our sweet spot is going to be 24. So let's go to 24. Now it's gonna be super perfectly balanced. And that's basically it. That is how you balance pretty much any gimbal out there. So hopefully this tutorial will help you guys out. If you guys have any questions, leave me a comment down below. The best place to follow me is on Instagram, Twitter, pretty much on all social medias at MondoBytes. Thanks again for watching, and you will catch me in the next one. Adios.